Fucking wildfire, man. Pardon my language. Might as well just start off with a fuck. Because that's the situation we're in here in Portland. It's absolutely so many things I'd rather talk about, or rather fill my time with, or make a video about. But I can't. I mean, what we're living through right now is a once in a generation, perhaps once in a lifetime event in Portland, but it could be a regular thing. And I shouldn't say Portland because that doesn't do any justice to the areas that are hardest hit. Areas like, Malala and Estacada, parts of Oregon which were under evacuation orders, which are a couple have been downgraded to a level 1 from a level 2 or from a level 3 to a level 2. And we're really trying to see the positive side in these things. But they are expecting 40-mile-an-hour winds down in southern Oregon, which are going to whip up some of these fires later today. I woke up this morning and I looked out the window and I couldn't see more than 100 feet. And I thought, shit, is that smoke or is that fog? It's one of those questions you ask yourself. I went outside and I couldn't feel any fog. I didn't see any moisture. But I could tell there was probably some fog. In my mind, I was telling myself, yeah, it's mostly fog. The smoke will clear. But I knew better. Now, of course, within a couple hours, the fog dissipated and the smoke was still twice as bad as it was yesterday. I took my dog for a walk yesterday afternoon because she hadn't been out in a while. Let her run in the field, and it was just disgusting. I mean, it makes breathing difficult. My wife and I have had a headache for 2 or 3 days. And we live in Vancouver, Washington, right over the bridge from Portland. So it's basically part of Portland. But it's actually in Washington State. Living in the gorge, the Columbia Gorge, it's a beautiful place, but it has its own weather, and you tend to get this fog and low-lying. We tend to get snow when others don't, that kind of thing. Well, smoke likes to hang here. I talked to my brother this morning, and his is even worse, and he lives in Hood River. And when I talk about air quality, the other day I said, that we compared it to, say, places like New Delhi or whatever. I don't know if it's New Delhi or Delhi. Anyway, the point being that some of the most polluted cities on Earth sit at about 145 on the chart. I think it's 145. I think it's parts per million, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure what the chart's based on. But the other day I said we were over 300 here in Portland. And that was double. We were by far the worst air quality in the world, all the way through southern Washington and Oregon, all the way down to California. Well, I just checked the chart before I made this video, and this morning Portland is sitting at 516, which is actually literally off the charts. And my brother said that they were at something like 700, if I wasn't mistaken. I don't know if that was a misprint or whatnot. Maybe it was 6. But we're talking about something that's like 5 times worse than the worst. I'm not going to go out and film it because it's on the media. It's on the news all the time. I can look out my window and it's just appalling. And it's creeping in through all the cracks and all the crevices in my doors and windows. And we are honestly probably, I want to say 15 to 20 miles from the nearest fire. So as the crow flies. So we're not in danger here at the moment. And we kind of live in some of the older houses in like the suburbs of Vancouver, so they're further out. But fire can start anywhere. And like I said, like in California and Oregon's way beyond this, but even in California, they've already have 26 times more acreage burned than at the same time last year. So 20 times worse. These fires are horrendous. And my heart goes out to all the people who lost their lives. Not only do we have dozens of fires going, but we already have dozens of people confirmed missing or dead, and those are just the ones who have been identified. Plenty of people who were under level 2 evacuation that maybe didn't move fast enough or didn't get the final notice. It's really important to stay vigilant during these times, be aware, and don't be an idiot. Don't put your life at risk for stuff. But there's also this side where people don't want to lose their homes. People are afraid of even looters coming. There's a lot of misinformation out there. Like my brother and I talked about this earlier, because somebody we know is patrolling his town with a assault rifle, looking for looters. And I had this discussion where I had mixed feelings about this. I said, He was saying that it was, probably not the best thing to do. That's a nice way of putting it. And I said, but there's another side of this. He's not in the city. He's in a town that's further out. But when it's all how to do is protect your own home, there's nothing wrong with that. I see nothing wrong with that. There is a lot of misinformation out there. No, Antifa's not coming to burn down your cities or towns. They are not even really involved in this at all. If anybody got caught and it turns out to be Antifa, it's probably somebody just saying it to get attention, or just some idiot, vigilante. It's not like a planned attack. But the point being that there are looters, and there are people who take advantage of these things. And they'll drive through the smoke, they'll go up to the big houses in the hills, and they'll hit them. And I don't know how many, but if you're one of the people who could be a victim, it would be hard not to want to stand and defend your territory. The same goes for the people who are staying back to hose down their house to try to, avoid the flames. That's a tough one. Are you willing to put your life at risk to keep hosing your house down? And now in Clackamas County, they've had to issue notices to people to please not hose down their houses because there's not enough water for the firefighters. And it's just chaos all around. And on top of it, as I said, none of us can breathe. Millions of people. I would like to correct something. I misspoke the other day when I said there were 500,000 people under evacuation. I should have said there are 500,000 people, or 12% of the population is under some sort of an evacuation order. And there's 3 schedules. Number 1 is, be aware. And number 2 is get everything ready and be ready to leave. Number 3 is get out now. So as for the people who are evacuated, there's over 40,000 last time I checked. And that is a lot of people. That is a huge amount of people that are trying to find a place to stay, that are trying to find help, that are trying to find something as simple as shelter, food. And meanwhile, you can't house people in fields or out in the open because everything is inundated with smoke. We opened up the convention center in Portland, and I believe Clackamas Town Center as well. We have these staging areas. Up where I live here in Clark County, we have, this is where it's become a horse haven, apparently, where everybody's bringing all their livestock because we have a lot of open fields. There's still a lot of farmland up here. It's not really a city, So, and we're kind of right on the edge of, all of these orchards and farms and whatnot. So there's plenty of room out here, and people are putting in their time and effort. People are overwhelmed with donations from people to help others. This is what I love about being a human being. And I'd love to say this is what I love about being an American. But altruism and helping others is not just an American trait. In fact, I've heard plenty of stories of people going to the Middle East, ending up in the middle of nowhere and being welcomed into strangers' homes because it's their custom. All around the world, people want to take care of each other. As long as they don't suspect you're out to kill them or steal from them. Maybe that's part of the problem we have right now. We always expect the other side's out to harm us. And never is it a good time to start pointing fingers, especially during a crisis, but we always do it. It's always got to be somebody to blame. Whether people are arguing over who set the fires or whether they were natural, or whether they're arguing over whether it's climate change or something else, right? The thing about climate change is that the climate's always changing. We've never seen fires like we've seen the last few years out here. And it's just heartbreaking to see how many people are affected by this. I was going to say I wish there was something I can do, but I know there are things I can do. I just haven't found my niche. I guess if I had the money and the time, I'd want to go down and help people rebuild. And, because I was a carpenter for 15 years, and I built, additions and small houses from the ground up. I understand how things go together, but it's like, it's so hard. I guess if I was rich, that's something I'd really enjoy doing. If I had the time and the money to go put, take an RV down there, take my bus down there and park and, help people do that. But I guess you don't have to be rich to help. That's not my point. But it's like trying to stay at home and run a business and you have your family. I have my kids at home that I've got to teach. And we talked about going on the road for a while in the bus and maybe trying to get some satellite connection so we could do school on the road. And, going to these places and helping, it just seems like the right thing to do. It's like I've never really done anything like that. I signed up for Habitat for Humanity years ago because I was building, but I never had the time when I was at work to go do these things. And then I was like, well, by the time I got around to wanting to do it, my back had given out and I'd basically given up as a carpenter. And so, anyway, we all go through hard times in our lives, and it's important to recognize that in each other, because one guy might be having a hard month and lose his job and lose his home. Let's just picture one person who loses everything out of this fire. And maybe it was a guy who was out helping his friends and he lost his house in the meantime. And then maybe his friends, ended up dying and he has nobody in his life. This guy ends up on the street. He's living on a street corner and he ends up being a homeless guy for a period of a couple months while he tries to get it together. There will be somebody who will walk by, look down and scoff at that person and say, oh, another bum on the street corner. It's really important to empathize with people's situation. And since we don't understand each other's situation, it's difficult to do that, and it's much easier to judge and point fingers. As I was telling my brother earlier, I try to empathize because it's better if I understand my neighbor and care about my neighbor than if I'm pointing fingers at them, unless they've done something wrong. And that's why I try to understand liberal viewpoints, conservative viewpoints, left and right, and up and down, and everywhere in between, and realize in that root thing, in that primal need, in that time of need, we come together. And I'll tell you this, when you're pulling somebody out of the wreckage of a hurricane or a tornado, or you're running into somebody's house to pull them out before they get burned up in a fire and loading their wheelchair into your car, do you think you're asking if they're a Democrat or a Republican? Just a thought. That's when being a human is what matters. And I think it shouldn't take a disaster for us to get there. But it just might. Be well, my friends, and take care of each other as best you can. Hard times for everyone. Just burning eyes, burning throat, headache. But I can still have gratitude for where I am right now. As I told my wife this morning, I look outside in the choking smoke and I can smell it in the house. It's coming through all the cracks in the doors. I said, I could live in thicker smoke. I could be one of these people who lost their homes or their families, but I have my family home safe with me. And that's something that I'm always grateful for. Talk to you later.